guys, welcome back to Scott Family Homestead. Today I'm dealing with a whole bunch of heirloom tomatoes that I grew in my garden, and so we have fruits all the way from, this is about 1.75 pounds, down to a little bit smaller ones. This is probably 3 or 4 ounces. I am going to can these today, and I don't have time to cook it all down into sauce, so I'm going to show you the easiest way to can tomatoes. You can do a whole bunch in one large batch, and it's going to go really quickly for you. We're water bathing this, and you can use these tomatoes in soups, stews, in place of anything that would require diced tomatoes, but you don't have to cut them up the way you would diced tomatoes. So let me introduce you to the process of making crushed tomatoes. We're going to start by taking each one of these tomatoes. We are going to cut the blossom end off, and we're going to cut the core out. We're going to peel these tomatoes. It's on my salsa video. You'll see how to peel tomatoes, but I will show you again here today. We're going to get these peeled. We're going to chop them roughly, and then we're just going to put them into a pan bit by bit. I will show you how we go about that. They will cook down a bit. You're going to end up with juices. You're going to end up with small pieces of tomatoes, and you're going to get large pieces of tomatoes. And it works amazingly for things like soups and stews. So my kids are eating these without even realizing it. So it's my favorite way to can tomatoes. Quick and easy. So let's get started. Okay, first I want to show you some of the varieties of tomatoes I have here. So this really large one, this is an Abe Lincoln, and that's the largest tomato I've ever grown. So this weighed 1 pound, 11 ounces, and it is a beast. Now this one was 1.5 pounds. This is a mushroom basket tomato. It's going to pose a little bit more trouble to peel because you can see it has a lot of cat facing here. And that kind of happened with a lot of my mushroom baskets. I do have some that aren't so bad. Got these Bonnie's Best tomatoes, which are these nice smooth ones. I have some Black Beauty tomatoes, so this one's a double. See some cat facing on there. That's what they call this stuff. It's like when 2 blossoms grow together and then you end up with kind of a gnarly looking bottom on there. But I do have some Black Beauties that look a little bit nicer. And so these will be very green when they first start growing, and they get this really black on top, and then they kind of turn this pinkish red underneath when they are ripe. Okay, I've got these orange ones. These are Dad's Sunset tomatoes. I have Paul Robeson's, which is what that one is there. They stay kind of green on the shoulders. They are soft, but then they get this purplish red on the bottom. Let's see, here's another one. So they get this deep green. And the red on the... A white Tomasol. So this is a white tomato. And they start out kind of yellowy, and then they get really, you can see the yellow on the shoulders, and then they turn a lighter white. And I do have just a couple Amish paste that are ready. The rest of mine on my plants aren't quite ready yet, but these are like your standard paste tomato. So we're gonna work our way through these and get them peeled. Okay, so the first step is just gonna be cleaning all of these up so that we can peel them. So I'm gonna cut out the core, and all of these pieces will go to the chickens or the pigs. Probably the chickens, because they like them the best. And check everything over, looks good. And then I'm going to cut out the blossom end down here. And then we are going to, I just like to put a little X on the bottom, because that helps make it so we can peel easily. And then what we're going to do is blanch these in hot water so that the skin starts to peel off. First, it's going to take a little bit here for me to work through all of these tomatoes and get them all cleaned up. While I do this, I'm going to get a pot of water boiling so that we can start peeling as soon as we're done here. And I will show you that process next. All right, let's peel these. Quicker and easier than you think. Okay, I've got boiling water, so I'm going to take my tomatoes that are all cleaned up and I'm going to set them in here for about 30 seconds to a minute. And you can do several at once. And now we'll let them sit. I have ice water here, so it's mostly ice and a little bit of cold water. This is where we're going to put our tomatoes after they start to separate. And that will stop the tomatoes from actually cooking down. Okay, so we can see now your tomatoes split and separate. That's perfect. So we're going to put this into the ice water. Now at this point, once they're cool enough to handle, you can just peel the skin right off. And you're left with a beautiful tomato that is ready to be canned whole. You can do these canned as halves, or you can do like we're doing and do crushed tomatoes. I'm going to set these aside and work my way through the rest of the tomatoes until they are all peeled like this. I'm still peeling tomatoes, but I'm going to get my water bath canner going. So I've got it set here with some water. I'm going to put 7 quarts in here because with the 20 pounds of tomatoes I have, I should be able to do a full canner load. I'm doing quarts this time, but you can absolutely do pints. I just double a lot of my recipes because I've got growing boys and I end up making large recipes. So I'm going to do a load of quarts here and then I'll probably do pints later on. But I need to get this warmed up with the jars in it so that we can get to loading our jars after we get the rest of these peeled. You're going to fill your canner about half as deep as a quart jar because when you put the jars in here, you're also going to fill them with water so they don't float. And when you dump that out, it's going to help bring up the water level in there. And the reason we do it like this is so that everything comes to temperature at the same rate so that we're not shocking any of our glass. Once you have all 7 jars in here filled with water, you put the lid on, put it on high, and just let it come up to temperature. Alright, I've got my large batch. They're all peeled. What you're going to do, you're going to take a stock pot. I'm going to use the same one that I just peeled all my tomatoes in, okay? It's empty. We're going to put all of the smallest bits of tomatoes that we have in there. Or you can quarter up some tomatoes for this part. Anything that got like cooked more, that's softer, you can put in there. You want about 2 to 3 cups of tomatoes in the bottom of this pot. Put it on the stove and start to heat it. And we're going to mash this first 2 to 3 cups to fill the bottom of the pan. So I'm going to go ahead and put this on the stove. I'm going to take a potato masher and mash those down. So this is the first 2 to 3 cups of tomatoes. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add these in batches. I'm going to quarter these and put them in just a couple of tomatoes at a time, cook it, stir it, add some more. What this does is it gives you everything from like a tomato sauce, small chunks to large chunks. And we're just going to do it all the way until the pot is filled and we can get it up to a nice heated boil, and then we're going to cook it for 5 minutes. And I just want to clarify, only the very first batch that you do is going to get smashed. The rest of them, you're just going to put them in there as quarters and keep stirring. Add a little bit at a time, let it heat up, add a little bit more. Okay, I've stirred it and nothing is scorching. Those chunks are still big, they're not going to cook down right away. But by the time we get this whole pile in there, those will have been in there for 15 to 20 minutes, and those will be cooked down to almost nothing. So we just keep adding nice big chunks, quartering our tomatoes, and adding a couple of cups at a time. This is such a great way to do heirloom tomatoes because a lot of them still hold their color, and so you'll have these jars with like chunks of yellows and reds and purples, and I just love it. I love it on the pantry shelves. I love it in my recipes. I'm about halfway through my tomatoes now, and you can see as we stir this, you've got all different sizes in here. So we've got all the larger ones on top. We're getting a lot of like sauce in here and liquid, and then there's also these just broken up pieces as well. I'm going to keep stirring this. I'm going to get the other half of the tomatoes put in here, at which time a lot of these bigger chunks will be cooked down. Okay, I've hit my limit on this pan, so I'm going to bring all of this up to boiling and boil for 5 minutes, and then we're going to start putting this into jars. At this point, we've got our tomatoes boiling and our jars are boiling, so I'm going to go ahead and take my jars out here while our 5 minutes goes and get them all set up on the counter so that I can get them filled as soon as these tomatoes are ready. So So the product we have at this point is also known as quartered tomatoes, and you'll see some of it's like broken up, some of them are bigger chunks. So at this point we're going to get them put into jars, but first we need to add lemon juice to our jars. So you're going to do a tablespoon of lemon juice for pints and 2 tablespoons for quarts, and you want to put it in first before you do your tomatoes. And you'll just use a bottled lemon juice for this. This ensures that the acidity level is appropriate to kill any kind of botulism, combined with the processing time. Now you can do crushed tomatoes in a pressure canner as well. You still want to add the lemon juice. But for simplicity, we're going to do this in the water bath. The quarts are going to go for 45 minutes and then adjust for altitude, which means if you're over 1,000 feet, you're going to want to look at your altitude chart and see how much time to add. Because we're over 1,000 feet here, just over 1,000 feet, we are going to actually add 5 minutes. So we're going to process these for 50 minutes. And you're going to leave a 1-inch headspace, meaning you're going to leave an entire inch of space between your food product and the lids. And you want to get a variety of sizes for the pieces that you're putting in here, along with plenty of liquid. You want to press these in and make sure that you don't have any air spaces underneath or around the tomatoes. And then adjust your headspace again to make sure you're at 1 inch. You can also add salt to these. You can put up to a teaspoon of salt per quart. I generally do not add salt. We did end up with an entire container of quartered tomatoes left over. So I will heat those and can those into pints with anything left over in this pot. Before we put any of our lids on, I'm going to clean this up really well. If you feel anything on there, make sure you give it a nice good scrub. I did a little bit more about water bath canning and the basics of it in my salsa video, so I'll link that below. If this still seems a little bit intimidating and you're just getting started with water bath canning, that one has a little bit more details to it. And then soon I'm going to do some videos touching on pressure canning as well. I've got some corn to pressure can, and I recently did some chicken that I recorded that I will be posting soon as well. So these are ready for their lids. I'm going to center these on there and then fingertip tight. I can hear my water bath is still boiling, so that's perfect. Depending on how long it takes you to jar everything up, your water bath might need to be brought back up to temperature again, and that's perfectly fine. You just want to make sure that it's boiling, a rolling boil, before you start your timer. Always brand new lids. Some people will tell you that you can reuse them, and some people have had really good luck with that, but it gives you a higher chance of having your seals go bad, and I don't like risking it. So I buy name brand lids, and I use brand new ones every time because I grew this in my garden and I don't want to risk losing any of it. Okay, so that's it. Our jars are ready to go, so I'm going to go ahead and put these into the water bath canner. But look how pretty those are. Isn't that just the coolest? Okay, I'm going to get these put in the canner. I'm going to make sure it's boiling, and then I'm going to start my timer for 50 minutes. And the biggest thing here is that the water goes over your jars by at least an inch. My alarm's went off telling me that 50 minutes is done. I went ahead and got some pints canned up in here, and I'm using this pressure canner just as a water bath canner. These are done, so I'm going to go ahead and turn the heat off on that. Remove the top and let this kind of cool for about 5 minutes before I remove my jars. Okay, all finished. I got 7 quarts and 5 pints, and these are gonna hang out here for about 24 hours. They all sealed up really nicely. I let them hang out here to make sure that they're completely sealed. Then we'll take the rings off. We always store them without the rings so that we know we're not creating a false seal. Label them and get them into the pantry and they'll be ready to be enjoyed. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. Please subscribe to our channel so you can stay up to date with all things canning, gardening, poultry, cows, pigs, all the things. We've got a lot more content to come. We're also on Facebook and Instagram, and we'd love to see you over there. So thanks for spending your time with me. I'll catch you on the next one. Bye, guys.